why should you listen to the advice that you hear and see within this video series? Let me give you a little bit of brief information in relation to me and in terms of my background. I've been teaching case study exams for nearly 10 years, and I've focused on the CIMA Chartered Institute of Management case study exams and indeed the ICAEW and the ICAI. Now, I've had very, very good success with each of those institutes and indeed with students studying for those professional exams. And I think the main reason for that is that what I try to do is to focus on honing students' exam technique skills rather than just the subject matter. In my experience, if there's a missing link between success and failure in case study exams for professional accounting students, is that their starting point is very much the text. In other words, the subject matter. And what they tend to do in their preparation time leading to the exam is really focus on learning and relearning the text and the information and the theory within the text, rather than focusing on what are and what is their case study exam testing. So really what I'm talking about is a focus on skills and in particular exam technique. There are really 5 main reasons why students are failing this exam. This list of 5 is certainly not exhaustive, and I've taken this from really 2 places. The first is my experience, as mentioned, of teaching case study exams. But the second area is the examiner's report, which are really gold dust for us. And these 5 points appear in virtually every examiner's report that has been published in respect of this paper. Knowledge dumps. What students are doing is that they're focusing on the subject matter and they're really trying to shoehorn theory into their answers. Their answers consist mainly of theory with very, very little application to the information that's been provided and indeed the exhibits. Which leads me on to my second point, reason number 2. And this is something that the ACCA SBL examiner talks about regularly on each of the examiner's reports. There's no application of theory to the information provided. You will get very little or no marks for simply regurgitating models such as Pastel or indeed Porter's 5 Forces or Porter's Diamond into your answers. What you've got to do is obviously understand the model, but apply it to the information that's in front of you. In other words, you've got to play what you see on the pitch. My third reason is poor planning, or indeed what he mentions, no planning at all. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to optimize your mark in the SBL exam if you don't have a plan of attack. If you don't have some sort of a system for approaching what is 14 to 15 pages or thereabouts of information. The fourth reason is something that can be easily addressed, and it is perhaps a little bit surprising. What your examiner talks about is students using the incorrect format. In other words, they're not using a report or they're not using a briefing note when they've been told clearly to do that. Now, if you think about it, this exam is in part a role play exam. What the ACCA are trying to do is to get a feel for what you are like in real life by presenting you with a real life scenario. So if you would imagine yourself in the office, if you're working at the moment, but even if you're not, just imagine yourself being in an office and being told by your line manager to perform a particular task over the next 4 hours and to provide it to your line manager in a particular format. And let's just say after the 4 hours that you went into your line manager's office and he or she thanked you for the information and it wasn't in the correct format. Imagine the reaction. Well, it's the same for your marker and indeed the SBL examiner. You're going to do 2 things by not using the format that you have been asked to use. The first one is it's highly likely that you're going to get offside or possibly annoy your marker. Because remember, markers are professional, probably ACCA qualified accountants who are being paid to mark probably 40 to 50, possibly more scripts. If you're producing an answer that simply doesn't listen to instructions, it's highly likely that you're going to get offside. The second point is, remember that this exam is about professional skills, and professional people do what they're told. If you're not using correct formats, you're going to lose those professional skill marks, which you can't afford to do. My final reason why students fail this exam, and this is mentioned several times within the examiner's report, is poor timekeeping. Now again, let's refer back to this idea of role play. Imagine yourself in an office, in a working environment where you are late regularly. In other words, you do not stick to time. And indeed, perhaps you don't hit deadlines. That's a surefire way to get offside with your colleagues, but also with your line manager or perhaps your immediate boss. Timekeeping is absolutely crucial to your success in this exam. In my opinion, this exam is not actually a seriously time-pressured exam like, say, the old P3 business analysis exam was. You have ample time. All you need to do is to plan properly. What you can't afford to do is to leave out the final part of the final question, or indeed the final question entirely, because your chances of getting over that 50% mark are very, very low if you do that. Timekeeping is about discipline. You need to do two things. Firstly, you need to establish the amount of time, absolute time, that you have for each part. And broadly speaking, you can do that by simply multiplying the marks for that particular requirement by 2. The second thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that when you start writing out your answers to each requirement, that you have an end time. And that end time must be stuck to, otherwise you're going to run into the next question.